So if they're asking us to graph a square root function, I would rely on a table of values. So maybe we can open up a table here, x versus f of x. And you really don't need that many points. Oftentimes, maybe like 4 or 5 points should be enough. Let's see what we got. So the first thing that I would do is I would copy and paste the stuff inside the square root, set it equal to 0 and solve. So I got x equals -4. It's kind of like the opposite of that number. And what I'm going to do with this number is I'm going to put it at the top of my table. And then I'm going to count bigger and bigger and bigger. For example, what's bigger than -4, -3, -2, -1, 0, and 1. So I looked at the problems that you had to do, and this technique should work for all of them, where you set that equal to 0, solve, whatever you get, put it at the top, and then count going forwards. Now, all we need are these y values. So to find them, take this x value and plug it in there. So I carefully typed in -4 in here into my calculator, and it said -1. Just make sure that you have all the correct things, that the -1 is outside of the square root and so on. So let's do that for all of these points. I did have to round some of these, but at the end of the day, this is what I got. Now let's go to the x and y axis and let's plot all these points. So this is the arrangement that these points have given me. And I could call this, sometimes they call this the start point or the initial point or the reference point, call it whatever you want. I'll just call it start point. And we call it the start point because that's where we literally start to draw. And a square root function looks something like this. So that's what I would do for these types of problems. Let the inside equal 0 and solve. That's where you start, count bigger, plug these into a calculator carefully, round these if you have to, plot the points and connect the dots. They did say something about investigating, so maybe we can tell them quickly the domain and the range. For domain, it's pretty much always going to be x. For range, it's always going to be y. And then go like this. Put a symbol like that and like this. For domain, it's x's like that. For range, it's like that. Now for domain, it's going to be left to right, left to right. That is, look at the graph. How far to the left, how far to the right does the graph go? And how far left? Boom, that's how far left we go, -4. How far to the right do we go? This graph goes to the right forever and ever and ever. So we go to the right forever, and that's why infinity is the biggest x value. What about range? You see, range is lowest to highest. Domain was left to right. That's how far left, that's how far right. Range is the lowest to the highest. How low does the graph go? Boom, that's the lowest point. And the y-coordinate is -1. What is the highest y-coordinate? Well, this graph goes up forever. It goes to the right, but it's also going up. So the largest y would be infinity. And because we actually pass through this point, -4 is part of the graph, we put a little bar for equality. -1 was part of the graph, we put a little bar for equality. So usually for these problems, the actual number has a bar, but the infinities do not. So with that in mind, try some of your problems and then let me know if you want me to do a different example. But you know what, just real quick, I think the hardest part of these problems is actually just telling the domain and range. So let's just do that. Let's pretend this is the graph that you made by doing a table. The domain is always x's, the range is always y's. Put those symbols. Now the domain is all x's, left to right, left to right. How far to the left does the graph go? Boom, right there. And when we talk about domain, we take away the x coordinate, -6. How far to the right does the graph go? It goes to the right forever. So this is infinity. Now range. Range is lowest to highest, lowest to highest. What is the lowest that this graph goes down to? Well, check it out. The graph goes down forever. You see that? It's going down forever. It's going to the right, but it's also going down. So the lowest y would be -infinity. That's the lowest. It goes down forever. What's the highest? The highest is, boom, right here. That's the highest point. And we take away the y coordinate. So for domain, you talk about the x coordinates. For range, you talk about the y coordinates. For domain, it's left to right. For range, it's lowest to highest. And put the bar here and here, because I put the bar at the regular numbers, right? These are regular numbers. The infinities, no little bars. So for this problem, that would have been the domain and range.